How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well, considering I haven't been on my mental health walks recently. Just trying to kick up the old vitamin D supplements so I can stay in a good mood. But yeah, I miss the sun right now. And I know it's like, well, hey, why don't you go for a walk in your neighborhood? Well, I live downtown LA and my walk around the neighborhood is Skid Row.
Yeah.
So that's why.
No, it's that's such a loaded question now. Like, how are you doing?
It
That's
really is. Mhm.
yeah. It's I feel like if you went back and listened or watched this show from the beginning till now, just in the couple of months I've been doing it, uh, that that opening segment has gotten so much more depressing.
It's funny you say that because I actually use those exact words, and because somebody asked me how I was doing, and I was like, "Wow, what a loaded question!" Like I wouldn't even ask anyone how they're doing because I know if they're compromised in so many ways. So it's like, what other question can I ask them to open up a dialogue without saying, "How are you doing?" It's an
I
interesting.
feel like I feel like it's almost more necessary now than it ever has been to ask questions like that. Like I've been almost intentionally making sure that's the first question I ask because it's like before it was just like a greeting. It was like something you threw out there as a conversation starter. Now it's like sincerely we need to check on each other.
Yeah, yes. And okay, then it's worth asking that question. It's worth it being a loaded question to get at how someone's doing, even if on the onset they're agitated for the question. So I guess, yeah, maybe like just being okay with that their answer could be agitated, you know?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I mean
actually
there's
not agitated anymore because I visited my dabs dealer yesterday. Not only did I get some dabs, some concentrated wax for my because I was smoking my joints and all, and that's cool. It's legal now. People smoke their joints, but I don't drink alcohol, and I was looking for something a little stronger without visiting said Skid Row for some heroin. So so I highly recommend the wax concentrates if you're looking for something a little stronger without hurting yourself, right? So I go visit my dabs dealer, and he's not only given me such a great deal, but and gave me a mask that his mom knitted.
it's like the sweetest drug dealer I've heard of in my entire life.
Only the sweetest.
Yeah. That's conscious capitalism right there.
Yep, truly.
So let's talk about you. So I mean, you're a performer, you are a comedian, you're an actor. How the hell did that start?
Oh, great question. Well, hold on. My It started with telling jokes as a kid that I got in trouble for. I think my first joke was we're Jewish, so we have Hanukkah, but we give presents, and I bought some soap at because when you're a kid, you don't have a lot of money, and so I noticed just before I gave it to my dad that it said the soap was made in Germany. So as I handed it to him, I said, "Here, it's made of our people." And then I cracked up, and then I saw my sister's face, and she said, "Run." So I ran to my bedroom, and yeah, I got my first lesson. And so yeah, I've been telling inappropriate jokes since the age of 7 and getting in trouble for them. My sister wanted to be an actress, and I wanted to be like my sister. So I became an actress. I'm a SAG actor. I have some fun credits and all, but I think my real calling always has been telling inappropriate jokes. So
How old were you when you said that joke?
I was 7 years old when I said that joke, and also 7 years old when I got my first fat lip. Also 7 years old when my dad taught me kung fu and how to kill somebody with 2 fingers.
So 7 was a big age for you, is what I'm
Big
hearing.
age. Big age. Big age. They say that you are who you are gonna be at age 6. So by 7, I was already mastering who I am.
God, I hope that's not true because I was a real shitbag when I was 6 years old. I was a real brat. Um, so
So
how
you're
long have you been performing?
so I was performing as a kid pretty much right out the bat. My mom was putting me in stuff as a little dancer. But I became I got into drama when I was in high school. So I'm going to age myself by telling the story. But Tupac Shakur came to my school, and in his junior year, he transferred from Baltimore School of Performing Arts to Tamalpais High. You can look that up and verify it. Um, he was a year older than me. His sister was a year younger than me. I was friends with him because my parents were civil rights activists. His parents were Black Panthers. That information somehow came across and we became friends. He was in drama and I was interested, but I was scared. And I talked to him about it. And then I joined drama and then I got into a bunch of plays. I've seen Tupac in a play at my school. It was The Boar by Chekhov. A lot of people don't know this, that Tupac was at a mostly white school in Mill Valley, California, and had a life with a bunch of white kids. So I joke around that I was more gangster than Tupac because I was in a real gang with his little sister, which was more of a roller skating troupe. But that's how much more gangster I was than Tupac. Because this kid he was writing his raps in poetry, and he'd have like 20 or anywhere from 20 to 200 kids out on the front lawn to hear him rapping his new raps. And yeah, so he's had a big influence on me, and not just because of the influence he had on people, but he told me what he was going to do, and then I saw him do it. And so that inspired me to pursue my dreams too. Why not? I mean, definitely didn't break out like Tupac, but he did good.
And
And
that's an incredible kind of LA, California story.
yeah,
I feel like that's probably nowhere near as common in the rest of the country.
I
Uh,
was not born into a common family. My mom actually dropped out of college to work. She was one of the very few people on staff for Martin Luther King. My grandmother also decided to follow her. And so these two ladies are in the Encyclopedia Britannica 1962 version of Under Civil Rights. You can see these two white ladies, my mom and my grandma, in front of the GOP protesting Goldwater. So I come from a long line of, activists, protesters, loudmouths, feminists. But I'm not your typical feminist. I'm not those like man bashing. I feel like I try to interpret for other females, the language of man. I feel like I'm part guy somehow. I try to bridge the gaps.
how does being born into a family like that shape you as a child and as an adult? How does that affect you in ways that you might compare it to kids you were growing up with who didn't have that kind of same environment?
Well, that's a great question because I was kind of thrown into having to answer that question pretty early on because as well-meaning as my parents were, I'm a Gen Xer who our whole thing is being neglected, right? So like my parents equated freedom with love. So I had all the freedom. In fact, I left home when I was the ripe old age of 12 and a half. I moved into my best friend's house with her mom and for a year. And then at 14, I was a live-in au pair, a live-in nanny with a woman who was growing magic mushrooms in her backyard. My new chore when I turned 15 was harvesting her mushrooms. So I was hitchhiking to high school in the morning next to some cows, getting like literally hitchhiking to get to school from Mount Tamalpais all the way in Bolinas, all the way to Mill Valley, California, and then hitchhiking back home. If I was in drama and I was, there was no bus after for any, extracurricular activities. So I did a lot of hitchhiking. It sounds crazy, but up north, it's pretty common. You still see hitchhikers trying to get over the mountain, and you end up getting the same rides with the same people. But I remember having my own apartment at 16 and a half, finally had my own job, and two jobs actually, and then still going to high school, still wanted to graduate, and having a rough go at it. And then being at my friends would come over and be like, "You're so lucky. You have all this freedom. You're so lucky. You have your own apartment." And they would leave, and then I would just like cry because I would exchange my life with theirs in a heartbeat. You know, I would go to their homes and big, nice Marin County homes, you know, with all the food you could eat, all the parenting love and attention you could get. And, a lot of these kids I felt like were kids. And so I needed more stimulation. I hung out with older adults because I was already basically was an adult with two jobs and going to school. And, I was wise beyond my years. I always was wise beyond my years. And I felt like in some ways I was ahead of the game as far as what you have to learn as a person to become responsible. And I was so responsible at such a young age that I walked into adulthood pretty easily and as compared to my friends who still have a hard time growing up. So, and then I had my artistic outlet. So the kids that were like me, who also were being neglected, who didn't have an artistic outlet, are criminals. They're fucking criminals. So I escaped a lot of shit. If at the very end of the day the worst thing I do is smoke my dabs, I think I did pretty well.
So, something that comes across as being very important to you, though, tying back into that family legacy, is also activism. You comment
Yes.
on politics a lot. You're very involved. Do you see that as part of a kind of a family legacy that you're living up to, or that you were kind of born into, or is this something that's completely unique and independent to yourself?
I was looking for what my generation's revolution was, and I was waiting and waiting, and it wasn't coming, and I'm like, you're wasting all this good talent. I'm ready to fight. And I think that moment came for me in 2016. My journey led me to being a water protector. I ended up being on the front lines from August 2016 to December 2016 on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation as a water protector. And they wanted to call us protesters, and we were protesting, but it was bigger than protesting. It was water protecting. And in fact, I even performed stand-up comedy for the veterans who came in December. We were all trapped in a blizzard. So I was able to be an activist and also entertain people. And so that was a big deal for me. It changed my life. It was one of the most, or maybe the most meaningful things I ever did. And I could talk about that for days, but we're living in a crazy time. So yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg there.
What inspired you to go out to Standing Rock?
Well, so I'm a melting pot of a person. So I'm my dad's Hungarian, Romanian, Jewish. My mom converted, so I grew up in a Jewish household, but my mom is Greek, Irish, and Native American. And the Native American that she is comes from both sides of her parents. Uh, Algonquin natives that are from originally Powhatan and Ottawan, and it sounds like they're two different tribes, but they're actually the same people. Though that were on the front lines who ran up to Canada. So they're Ottawan Canadian, but they're really from what is now basically Manhattan. So that's a long way back in my lineage, but man, they say only if even if you only have one drop, you know, you feel it, you feel it. So when that was happening on Standing Rock, there are over 500 federally recognized tribes in America. Um, there were at least from August, there were 200 tribes that all showed up. People, you know, that were historically tribes that were historically enemies came together. It was huge, and so people that were just called, and my grandmother died around that same time that summer, and yeah, my mom was just saying, you know, if she was a little bit younger, she would have joined you. She would have been there. So I really am my grandmother's daughter. She would have been there. So I was there. When she died, I ended up inheriting the few pieces of native jewelry that she had. And, you know, just a little tiny sliver of a piece of my personal history that, that just surprised me too. You know, I just ended up being there and feeling like, I mean, take away race, take away that I have a connection to it historically, forget all that. It's that I'm built for um, a fight, the good fight. And so when it was presented to me, I took that chance. Now, from August to December, you know, there was over 10,000 like 10,000 people altogether, and non-natives, allies that ended up there, who it kind of, you know, became a, I hate to say it, but it was like, come on people, this isn't Burning Man. There's no rides here. You know, there's too many of you. Like, we get that you want to participate, but this is not a fucking festival. So it was a shameful situation at the end. And then we had less than 24 hours to get our shit and get out. And then all the people in Bismarck, North Dakota, were like, "Oh, look, they act like they're activists and care about the environment, but look at all the stuff they left behind," and made everyone look so bad because um, what they don't, because when there's like a war, there everything gets burnt. And so natives were basically burning the items that were left there because that's a sign of war. You destroy everything there. So they turned it into something that it wasn't, and without understanding it, yeah, I'm not sure where I lost.
That's a I think that's a common kind of through line that we see with a lot of protest movements. I mean, we saw that with the Occupy conversation back in like 2011, where
Right.
it's like these people are literally forced quickly out of a spot. The spot is obviously then going to be trashed, and then that becomes used as a line
Right.
against them. I mean, do you think that that in its own way is intentional?
Yes, I do. And to start out with, what was intentional is that the original route that the pipeline was going through was through the 98% white population of Bismarck, North Dakota, and they rejected it wholeheartedly. Nobody had to protest. They just simply rerouted it through the Great Sioux Nation, only source of water. And you know, that's that was never gonna fly. So recently, so I was there when Obama finally, in the end, put a stop to the Army Corps of Engineers put a stop to their environmental impact wasn't sufficient enough, so he put the project on pause, but only long enough for Trump to come in and sign something on his desk, and he pushed the pipeline through. So now there's all this oil running through there, and then sometime in 2019, I don't remember exactly, there was a 250,000 barrels. We're not even talking gallons, we're talking barrels that were spilled in North Dakota, all across North Dakota. So all of our concerns, all of the tribe's concerns it was right there. So, and one thing that I found out when I was there is, I met a man, John Baumgarten, who used to work for Big Oil, and he was making a documentary, and he showed us what he was working on and who he is. And this guy's basically a big whistleblower for Big Oil. And he let us know that Big Oil owns, not only do they own Big Oil, but they also own the cleanup companies that Big Oil has to hire when they spill. So guess what? They get paid twice. Not only that, but they can't actually clean it up. So what they do is they're called tar sands, because all they do is pour sand over the oil. So now it's just basically with the tar sand pit. And the guy found out that one of the places where he cleaned up, the whole entire town is dying of cancer. The whole entire town. And so he knew that the spill had leaked into the ground, and it was going through people's faucets, and people were drinking this contaminated water. And then he found out that not only does the oil company own the Big Oil and the cleanup company, but they also own the water filtration company. So what he's saying is they're actually triple dipping. And if you cannot afford these expensive water filtration systems, you just die. So that's just, so many levels of crime, so many levels. And, people want to call people like me conspiracy theorists. Well, I like to call myself a conspiracy. Well, I never called myself this, but they're conspiracy facts. Once you have facts in your face, it's a conspiracy, because mainstream media is not picking it up. And I remember the fake news before it was being called fake news. And CNN was just basically just lying their asses off about what was happening at Standing Rock, because I was on the ground and I was seeing things that were not matching what the news was saying. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. That's why I smoke.
Do you think that is due to an intentional effort on behalf of kind of these corporate news conglomerates, or do you think that tends to be...
I think they're lazy in part because what they did was CNN's not on the ground because nobody's paying their journalists to go do that. They really don't give a shit. And so they're just taking the local news, the racist Bismarck local news, and then just repeating what they said, and without any fact checking. So, and I don't say Bismarck, racist Bismarck lightly. I'm saying, holy shit, bro. Like, you and I have heard about how racist the South is. Nobody knows what natives know about the deep North. They refer to it as the deep South. It's the deep North. These people are very cruel, and they take, their kids are dressing up like Indians at Halloween, and just disparaging and just disgusting. It's just, the things that I've seen are just horrendous. So yeah, the deep North, that's something that I took away with me.
It is. I think the racism that Indigenous folks face is often not reported on or shown with the magnitude that to the level that other kind of disenfranchised groups in the country have experience. And I think that's just true of anything in regards to Indigenous people, is that it's not reported on and it's not discussed nearly as much as it should be.
Right. And most people don't even know, like, until Standing Rock happened, nobody knew this disproportionate number of women that were going missing, just missing and murdered Native women. And so the No More Stolen Sisters came out of this. There's two senators now who are Native women who had Trump. Trump actually did something good in his life, and he signed this bill so that there's now a federal task force on top of this issue, and there wasn't before. And tribal police had no help with the situation, and it's tied back into these oil workers, because what they do is they set up these man camps anywhere they're building a pipeline. They're called man camps. And these man camps are just basically a giant trailer park, temporary trailer park. And I read some blogs from Native women who are saying that these man camps, they're basically passing around little Native boys and girls and women as, you know, sexual toys, and they go missing. So I've gotten in trouble for talking about this before from the wives of man camp people who say, how could you even say this? These are our husbands. They're out there working and I'm like, well, then take this up with your husband, because he knows something.
It's a truly horrifying concept and story.
Sorry to horrify you, but it needs to be talked about.
People need to be horrified sometimes.
That's right.
Now, we're coming to the end of the program here, and this is going to be a big pivot, but I like to ask everyone who comes on this show the same question to wrap things up, which is, through your life, through your career, through your work, just in general, what is the one thing that is most important for you to convey to other people?
Well, my dad was a journalist, so an independent journalist who's still in hiding, I should say. And he taught me that the headlines are smoke and mirrors, to look for the smaller stories that are being hidden, the stories that are being suppressed, and that's your real news. I've seen him show me articles that he wrote and submitted to Time magazine, and then what they actually published, and it's not the same story. So it's pretty much all fake news. Independent journalists are your friends. Look for people who are actually on the ground with their own eyes, seeing what they're seeing, and find out the truth. The truth is out there. In this world of misinformation, the truth always is still out there, and you can find it. And just take a stand for your convictions. Take a stand for what you believe in, because now is the time to do that. There's no other time.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That's Dinah Leffert.
Thank you.
Find her online. Dinah. Oh my God, did I mispronounce it wrong twice?
No, it's okay. It's Dinah Leffert. You asked me about Leffert when I said I put the effort in Leffert, but we didn't talk about Dinah. But it's okay. Like, people call me Dinah, tomato. But I had to give you some shit about it.
You should, as you should. I love that I asked you about the pronunciation of your name and then still fucked it up twice. That's going in the highlight reel.
You're good. You're awesome, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming on and speaking with me. And have a great weekend. Please stay safe.
Thank you. You too.